All right. I'm waiting. I'm waiting. There it is. Hi, YouTube. Welcome. Hello. It is Friday. How is everyone doing? What is going on? Thank you for being here. All right, let me get this popped out over there. Da, da, da. All right. Hello. Hello, everyone. Hello, Twixie Shores. Hello, Heather. Hello, Feels Violet. Hello, Rin. Hello, Marie. Hello, Nathby. Hello, Nathan. Hello, Lily. Hello, Bailey. Hello, Dipetus. Is that Greek? I don't know. It could just be a made up word. Hello, Tanya. Hello, Nikki. Welcome, Kelly. Squidia. Ooh, love that. It sounds like a ocean-based female supervillain. I love it. It's great. Hello, Vicky. Hello. Welcome to the stream. All right, I'm just going to pop over on Twitter real quick, let people know that we're streaming here on YouTube, and then we will get into it. Oh, I accidentally closed it. Okay. Where's the chat? Where'd it go? Gonna finally get some drawing done while I listen? Awesome. Sounds like a plan. Good evening, Naomi. Yes, hello. We are back. It is Friday. Okay. Do I like where my chair is currently? Let's listen. Comfort is the most important. I have this like really big blanket, and it's not making it easy to navigate where I want my chair, you know? Okay. I think it's like the optimum microphone to screen to my chair ratio. That's really what I'm looking for. Okay, so I'm going to say this, and I would love it if anyone who hears me say this now can remind people in the chat in the future, because this is a pet peeve of mine. I know about how to build a sex room. Anytime anything comes out on Netflix, every person who's ever subscribed to my YouTube channel lets me know about it. We are going to watch How to Build a Sex Room on my Patreon this weekend. We're going to do some commentary on it, and then I'm going to decide if there's enough in there for me to like make a video about it. I know about it. I'm going to watch it. If anyone else asks me during the stream if I know about the show or if I'm going to watch it or review it, you can tell them to go back to the first 5 minutes of this stream and rewatch what I'm saying now, or just tell them that I know about it and I am going to watch it. I will make a review if there is enough relevant content in there for me to make a video about it. So that's just spiel, that's just scoop. Don't know why I said it like that, but you know, that's how I said it. So have no fear. I am continually up to date on everything on Netflix because the internet cannot give me any peace about constantly having new things being released. Like every day, Twitter advertisements, Google newsfeed suggestions. Here is 5 new shows for you to watch on Netflix. And it's like, I don't actually watch Netflix that much. At least not on my own. I rarely watch television shows or anything on my own. I pretty much only do it for YouTube content, if I'm being honest. It is Love Unleashes all over again, which I still have not gotten around to filming a review of because the idea of doing that is daunting. Like, I'm just thinking about all the things I would need to say and dissect, and I haven't done it yet. Because I know people do sometimes, like I know Kat Black, I think when she does movie reviews, she kind of does more like off the cuff, I just watched this, and here's my like snap thoughts and opinions. And I feel like that doesn't really work with my brain, so I don't do that. I have to like sit and I have to analyze it and like talk about like the important themes and like really break down everything in a lot of detail. And I was like, there's so much to say about that movie. And most of it is good, which is a nice change of pace. But the editing for stuff like that, especially having to get around copyright issues, is so It's such a huge pain in the butt. It's such a huge pain in the butt. And like, if editing around like movie stuff for reviews wasn't such a huge issue on YouTube, I would probably do it a lot more. It's just every time it's an issue. It doesn't matter if it's like so clearly commentary about the thing and the point of the video is like commentary and review. Doesn't matter. Does not matter in the slightest. I mean, I'm glad that to be clear, like, I'm glad that Netflix keeps making, like, TV shows. They bless them. They try so hard to make BDSM stuff work. They're like, we're going to try reality TV shows. We're going to try drama TV shows, movies, documentaries. Like, they're just throwing anything at the wall and seeing what sticks, which I like. I love that they really, I think, want to put out, like, sex positive. I don't know, part of it is, like, maybe it's like it's dramatic and attention grabbing, and it, you know, it's sort of like in the way that like HBO sometimes makes like shows more salacious than they need to be for the story, but just because they can like show nudity because it's like a separate network, you know, like it's, I don't know how much of it is genuinely like Netflix being like, we value these types of stories versus the titillation, the novelty portion of it. But whatever it is that's motivating them for this particular thing, where they try every year they try a new thing involving kink or BDSM or sex, and they're like, we're gonna go for it this time. And like, honestly, I really do expect that we're gonna see, at least I would hope, because of how successful I think it was and how positively it was received, I really do think we are gonna see more Love and Leashes. I really, really do. I'd be shocked if we didn't. But I don't know how easy it is to make a sequel to that. Like, if it, like with the Korean side of things, because it is a Korean production as opposed to American, if that might be a little different. They are banking on that 50 Shades money, which is so funny because, like, 50 Shades of Grey, the book came out like a decade ago. Like, it's the amount of cultural cachet, or maybe it's just that it really sticks in people's heads. But let me make sure if I'm getting this correctly. Because the 50 Shades, when did the first movie came out in 2015, and then the second movie came out in 2017, and then 2018 was 50 Shades Freed. And then the books, although obviously, as everyone knows, they were based on fan fiction, it says they were published from 2011 to 2021. So it has been a decade of 50 Shades of Grey, and it's been several years since anything related to that franchise has come out. Well, I should say, like, in terms of movies. The most recent book that came out was Freed from Christian Grey's perspective, which I read and reviewed. But as far as the actual movies go, they haven't been out for a while, but they still are, like, so important in this weird way for what movie studios will think is, like, a big success for, like, a, like, erotic thriller, like, edgy romance. I don't know, is there even a name for that genre of, like, it's a romance, like, movie mostly focused on sex scenes, but it tries to have a little bit of a plot that's not just, like, boning each other, which, if you look at 365 Days, if you've watched the most recent one, as I have, and I didn't review it because there's no BDSM in it. Like, there's like some sort of kinky sex with sex toys, but it's like one scene out of like 50 sex scenes. And like, I don't really know what to say about a movie that's really just a series of sex scenes. Like, there's not really a lot to analyze there. Like, at least with 50 Shades of Grey, you can go like you can look at like how insane the like B and the C plot are, or you can look at like, you know, the history of the production of it. Like, there's more you can kind of dig into for a review, whereas with the most recent 365 Days movie, there's just nothing really there, nothing really going on, sadly. It is weird how those books became such a cultural touchstone. I'm trying to think of something else that would be like similar to this, that had like a, I mean, there was sort of that rash. There's a rash of, is that the phrase? A rash? A rash of something. Okay, Google. A large number of unpleasant events at the same time. Well, okay, then that is what I mean in this case. There was sort of a rash of a bunch of like 90s sort of romantic comedies, mostly more romantic dramas that happened. You know, there's like Sleepless in Seattle, You've Got Mail, When Harry Met Sally, There's just like a whole bunch of those movies that came out in a couple of years of each other, and I feel like none of them maybe individually were super important, but together it was like a really popular type of movie to make. But 50 Shades of Grey is like so unique in the way that it still stands out, maybe because of how shocking it was, or how bad it was, or like the fact it kind of connects sort of the previous like public hatred towards Twilight into this newer, more adult thing. So then instead of making fun of teenage girls, you know, making fun of adult women, and so that's fine. Like, is that what it is? I don't know. I have seen the movie The Piano Teacher, and it makes me really uncomfortable. I could not make a review of The Piano Teacher because my review would be, I will not promote or endorse adults between teachers and adults and children as being at all anywhere close to BDSM. It's just a power abuse. That's it. Although it's not the most disturbing movie I've seen that's kink related. There's a couple more that I've seen. Like, I couldn't finish watching Dogs Wear Pants, Dogs Don't Wear Pants. It's a Scandinavian movie. I wasn't able to finish watching that one. I think it was mostly because of the headspace I was in when I was trying to watch it. It was just too dark. Like, the mood was just off. It kind of reminded me of trying to watch The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. Similar vibes to that somehow, in terms of it being like eerie and depressing. And that's not generally what I like in my BDSM movies, you know? It is basically a 2-hour-long porno. That's basically it. Have you seen 101 Dalmatians? Of course. I think I used to own that one on VHS tape, actually. There was the fact you had a middle-aged vanilla woman reading a kink book on the train. I mean, I feel like I don't really care about that so much. Like, I personally read, like, all of my, like, kink books pretty much go on my Kindle, and so, like, no one can really see what I'm reading. I'm glad that women found something that was enjoyable to read. Now, if they were, like, reading it out loud, or, like, listening to the audiobook in a way that you could hear, okay, don't do that. But I feel like for the most part, I can't really be bothered about, oh no, women on trains reading a book, because it's like you just think about the fact that, like, I don't know, men have boners on trains all the time, and it's about as visible as a woman reading an erotic book on a train. So unless we're gonna, like, blame men for having boners on public transport, I'm not really gonna blame a woman for reading a, like, sexy romance novel on public transit. You know, it's like, I don't have my energy. My energy's not up for that. It's not where I'm at for blaming people. All right, let me see. Okay, so I rambled about 50 Shades of Grey for 10 minutes. My bad. Let's try to not do that this whole stream. So, let me turn to face the camera here. Okay. Hi, everyone. It is our Friday night live stream, and that means it is an FAQ. I do have some suggestions in the title of things to talk more about, which would be, we've talked recently about stealthing. That raised, I think, some interesting follow-up discussion questions, maybe, let's say. And I don't know if I'd ever make a video on, like, hookups and, like, casual relationships and casual sex. If you guys think you would want to see a video about that, let me know. Because I do talk about, like, relationships and dating and things, and so it sort of connects with my content, especially because I have talked about things like, you know, choking and stealthing and things that are really common, especially in, like, casual hookups. And so maybe some kind of broader conversations about conducting casual relationships and looking for hookups in, like, a safer way, which is what I would want to do for a video like that. Maybe that sort of warrants that discussion, but maybe people don't want to see that and don't care. I don't know. But today I was thinking about sort of connecting the conversation with stealthing into a larger conversation about, like, dating, hookup culture, finding hookups, casual relationships, and, like, kind of the whole thing in general. But this is my channel, and so we do talk about a bunch of other subjects like BDSM and kink and polyamory and asexuality. So it's really about what you guys want to talk about. You know, you can talk to me about the UK election that's happening right now. Talk to me about the fucking Tories and the top people they have currently running to be the leader of the party after ousting Boris Johnson. Like, talk to me about this season's hottest anime. Like, I don't know. We can talk about whatever we want. These are just some ideas and suggestions for things that I think are important to follow up on, just because, especially when it comes to the stealthing discussion, I sort of anticipated maybe getting a little bit of people going in a certain direction, but it's actually been way more than I expected, and so I want to make sure that my point's clear and maybe kind of have a little bit more of a discussion related to like definitions and some related points, and just kind of maybe broadening the conversation beyond what was like originally in the video. But again, otherwise it is an FAQ, so really, really quickly, I didn't say this yet, this is 18 plus only, like it says right there. 18 plus only, so if you're not 18, please don't be here. And also, please read the rules and the FAQ down below. That'll help you figure out, you know, questions to ask and things that we've talked about a lot. So if you have more general questions like, where do I buy a flogger? How do I find a BDSM event? How do I find a dom? How do I tell my partner I want to be a submissive? Any sort of questions like that is probably going to be in the FAQ, and if your question is answered by the FAQ, I may skip over it. I don't always, because I know we always get, you know, new people coming in all the time, and I do try to make space for those like newer questions, because I don't think there are stupid questions. There's just questions that we talk about answers to a lot, and so I want to, you know, more focus on questions that we haven't really gotten to in a level of detail before versus like, you know, just answering the same like 5 questions every live stream. So those are the kind of things to know. If you want to make sure that I answer your question, I recommend asking it now because I almost always run out of time to answer everything. So I would just get in there early. I do answer questions in the order they come in. Please don't spam the chat multiple times with the same question, because I'm not going to see your most recent question before I see the previous one. So I will give people an opportunity, you know, about 15-20 minutes before we end the stream to just re-ask anything in case I did miss something or you have follow-ups or something else. So if you want to make sure that you're going to get your question answered, do it early. Don't necessarily do it often, but you will have a chance at the very end to re-ask a question if I did miss it. So that's the spiel. That's what's going on. I wouldn't say open season for politics, only UK election. not general politics, just the current UK Tory leadership election. That is the only thing. I'm giving temporary permission for that discussion because I did tweet about it earlier, so I feel like that's only fair. But yes, that's what's going on. So let's get into some of the questions. Let's see what's going on. Okay, we talked about sex room. Again, if you guys want to know, I do know about the show, how to make a sex room, how to design a sex room, whatever it's called. I am going to watch it. We're watching it this weekend on Patreon. So if you're a patron, you can watch it with me and we'll react and laugh, hopefully, and have a fun time, and it'll be good. So I am watching that. I do know about it. I have not seen it yet, though. How has Bandit been doing as of late? Hope you're both doing well. Is she in here? No, she's outside. If it's sunny outside, even if it's dark outside, she's probably outside. She loves the weather right now. She loves being outside here. She spends the majority of her day outside in the grass, smelling stuff, chasing squirrels. She's having a great time. So she's been doing really great. I had a little bit of a scare with her a couple of days ago where I still don't know what happened exactly. So maybe like dog owners of older dogs can tell me what happened here, but my dog woke up from taking a nap and she just like started whining in this really like a pitiful way. She was like, and I was like, oh my god, what's wrong? Like, because she had been with me on the couch and we were, you know, snuggling on the couch, and then I let her down, and you know, I took a nap on the couch for a while, and then she was sleeping like in front of the fireplace, but the fireplace was off, like, because it's the middle of summer. So, of course, it wasn't turned on. But she woke up and she seemed like she was in a lot of pain. And then she didn't want to, like, put any weight on her front right paw. And I was like, okay, that's really weird. And I was like, I was worried she had, like, torn another ligament or, like, jumped off of something when I wasn't looking. I was like, what's going on here? So I called, like, a bunch of vets. I called, you know, they don't really have, like, urgent care for pets, but, you know, like, pet hospitals. And basically they were like, well, if she's like, eating food and stuff, you know, and she's in like a lot of pain, because I was able to like touch every part of her leg, and I was able to like see if I thought maybe something was stuck on her paw, or maybe she'd stepped on glass or something. And so I was like touching her to see, maybe if something was on her, and I couldn't find anything. And so I basically just held her and like walked around with her for, a couple hours, maybe 2 or 3 hours. And then within a couple hours, she was like totally fine. She was like, she maybe was a little bit more delicate on that paw than usual, but like, the next day she was totally fine. And I was like, what happened? Like, she went from like whining and being really upset and being like acting like she's in pain to being totally fine. And the only explanation I can come up with is that she was sleeping on her paw and her paw fell asleep when she was sleeping. Like she accidentally cut off, she pinched a nerve or something maybe, and she cut off blood flow, so her hand or her paw was asleep, and so when she woke up and tried to stand up, it was like painful. That's the only thing that makes any sense, because she's totally fine physically. Never had that happen before. So that's the Bandit update. She's doing great, and she's loving being outside. Oh my gosh. Hi, Evie. My girlfriend and I used the advice from your videos to guide us through a DS negotiation recently. Thank you so much. Yeah, definitely. Congratulations on the DS negotiation. Big step forward. And I wish you luck in your DS journey together. How exciting. Evie, I really appreciate your video on stealthing. 100%. Oh, I think there was a correction to this. I saw. 0% victim blaming, but this is exactly what the type of thing that makes casual sex not worth it. I think that's certainly worth having a discussion around, right? Sort of the calculus that you do when you're deciding sort of like, how much do I want to like partake in casual sex? Is this part of my risk profile? Like, if you don't know about stealthing, then you can't necessarily have fully informed opinions about whether or not you should be engaging in casual sex, and like if that is something that you are okay with. So I'm super happy to go into that in more detail. I do think it is a very difficult subject to talk about. And actually, I was anticipating more comments from people about the section of the video where I talk about sort of advice for like how to avoid stealthing or how to prevent stealthing, because I sort of expected that people might interpret that as being like victim blaming or putting the responsibility on people to prevent it as opposed to, teaching people not to do the thing. But the reality is that we live in a society and we live in an era of sex education where we can't really expect that people are going to be taught to not do this, and they're in fact rewarded for doing it socially by their peers. And so, of course, and also like physically, like in terms of their own pleasure, like mentally as well, I imagine they're rewarded for it. And so they're going to keep doing it. And so it's better to be equipped kind of like proactively with tools for like avoiding it or recognizing it when it's happening versus just relying on like, oh, we should teach people not to do this. I think it has to be a two-pronged approach of like both in the moment for now for the purposes of harm reduction, because we do need to think from a harm reduction perspective of with, especially for Americans, elsewhere in the world, it's going to be different. I'm actually not really sure, other than Australia, what the data is on stealthing. I know it must happen in other countries, but I don't know what the research says. But they're, like, the thing is you have to think, okay, in today's current state of affairs, getting an STI or, heaven forbid, having an unwanted pregnancy is now so much higher risk than it was, even 6 months ago. Okay, now we have to really think about, if you're engaging in certain behaviors, how can you do more to keep yourself safe? And I really want to encourage that without getting into the territory of like, if you didn't do literally everything to prevent this from happening to you, it's your fault. Because that's not what I want, right? It's not about, on a list of 10 things to prevent stealthing, if you don't do at least 6, then it's your fault it happened. That's not it at all. It's about like, hey, not a lot of people know what this is, and so you're not going to get taught this, but if you are going to be engaging in casual sex with somebody you don't really know, especially, here are some things you could do to reduce the likelihood of having this as an issue, and that's really all it is. And it's always going to be on the person that is violating the consent of somebody else, always going to be their fault for choosing to violate someone else's consent and violate that boundary of trust, even if that boundary maybe, or that bond of trust has not been around for very long. So it's a tight rope to walk. It's a fine line, and I think most people seem to understand what I was trying to say with that, and I'm really grateful. But there's a lot of people, I think, and I saw that on the comments. A lot of people that express this idea of being really afraid of men and being afraid of having sex with men and just being like, well, men aren't worth it anymore. I can't believe this happens. And, you know, as an ace person myself, I understand a lot of that sentiment. And it's sort of like doomerism, but like the non-incel version of doomerism, where, you know, you just hear all these terrible things that are happening all the time, be it other forms of relationship abuse, be it coercion, be it men continually pursuing as young of women as possible, or Elon Musk's dad having kids with his stepdaughter that's half his age, or like there's just so many stories you hear all the time of condom sabotage and non-consensual choking and people posting revenge porn and taking photos and videos without somebody's permission, and just all this stuff that's so overwhelming that when you look at all of it, and it is just like the lump of what you're dealing with, you're like, oh my god, why the fuck would I ever be involved in any of this? Like, why would I take that risk? And it can feel really, really overwhelming and scary. And certainly I definitely have days where I'm in that place where I'm like as somebody, again, that's asexual, where like the sex is not really for my own sake if it's happening. Like, it's about the other person and their needs for bonding and intimacy and how sex connects to that for most people that are not asexual. And so it's like, well, why the fuck would I want to do this? And like, why am I? And for me, the lot of the barrier is like, well, I want romantic relationships and I want like a long-term life partner, and I have these goals for my life that involves having people like that, you know, in my life. And like, I can't get that unless I have sex, and the expectations around sex are like full-on vaginal intercourse by the second date and spending the night on the third date. And like, I don't know, none of that feels safe. None of that feels safe right now. Like having sex with somebody who is functionally a stranger on the second date, spending the night in their home on the third date, you know, like it blows my mind. I know other people are in that place where they're like, yeah, I do that all the time. I just do not, for myself, understand doing that whatsoever. All those feel like really, really big relationship steps. And it's just fascinating to me how other people sort of have different perspectives based on their own like needs and wants for relationships, on what they're comfortable with or not. And like, it's also interesting to me, and I just sort of started thinking about this recently, and I don't know if this is like a safety thing or like a gendered expectation thing, but something I've noticed a lot is it's almost always the case that the man will host, which is interesting. But like, the woman gets invited over to his place, into his space that he controls, spends the night at his place. And I get the reluctance as a woman to give a strange man your exact address. And I'm not even talking about like, you know, hey, you know, let's hook up on Tinder, here's my address. Like, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about you've been dating, you've gone on a couple of dates, like you know that they're not just like a catfish or something, at least. Like, at the very minimum, you know that they, you know, they look the way that their profile pictures on their dating app looks, right? At the very bare minimum. And so there's a little bit more of like a start of a trust bond developing, but it is still the case that it's like sort of the woman, more the expectation the woman will go into the man's space. And I'm talking about heterosexual, like cis people relationships right now, because that's the most common talking point. So I'm not sure what happens if you're in like a queer relationship, or, you know, how the expectations are different there. But in this case specifically, it's very strange to me how it's like there's that way that it's kind of generally expected to go, and the other way around of like the woman inviting the man over, like, yes, it's sort of like dangerous from this idea of like he knows exactly where you live, and like he knows how your house is set up and everything else. And I get that can feel risky, but also if you're going into a stranger's space that they know and they control and you don't really know a whole lot about, like, that's also very dangerous in its own way for different reasons. And so it's just like so interesting to me. Anyways, lots of stuff to talk about when it comes to stealthing and hookup culture and hookups and casual relationships, and I would love to talk more about that if any of you have any questions related to that. But for now, I will stop my rambling and move on to another question. All right, let's see what we got next here. My sadism is rising. I don't know what I did that made my sadism pop out, but I believe you. The Secretary? Oh my gosh, I filmed a review of The Secretary This is why I have such hard, like, opinions about YouTube and copyright. Is I made over a year ago a review of The Secretary, and I tried so many different ways to edit that review, and YouTube just it was like blocked worldwide. Like, this wasn't like, oh, just the monetization is going to go to the copyright holder. This was like block worldwide. No one would be able to see the video, like, type stuff, and it just drove me up the wall. I could not figure out how to get that to come out. It's so frustrating. I'm definitely going to have to revisit it because I've put so much work into it, but at this point it's over a year old, so, like, I don't know. Do I want to release that? Do I want to try and refilm it? I don't know. Any tips to go in an event after a few years out of the scene? Well, I mean, I don't know if you mean in terms of, like, how do I talk to people, or, like, what event should I go to? So I'm going to kind of do a broad brush answer here. And I'm going to say that if you want to go out and meet people, be that for dating, be that for friendship, be that for, whatever else it is you might be looking for, I always recommend going to primarily social events first. Those could be things like discussion groups, they could be classes, they could be hobby meetups, they could be munches. So there's lots of ways to meet people in a way that's not just like at a dungeon with the expectation of play, where it's more casual. You get to meet people, it's lower pressure, they get to know you, you get to have a sense of, like, hey, like, where should I be going? What's the good dungeon around here? Anywhere I should be avoiding? Any people I should be avoiding? So I would recommend that, just to kind of refamiliarize yourself with the area if you're in the same area as you used to be a couple of years ago, and just to kind of know what the good information to know is. And just don't worry about being new. I genuinely, every single week, every single month, there are always new people. Doesn't matter. There's always new people. Not every single one of them is going to show back up again. Not all of them are going to be there every single week from that point onward. But people are very used to people coming in for a month or two and then just, like, disappearing and not coming back, or going very occasionally, or having been in the scene a couple years ago and then coming back now, especially with everything that's been going on the last couple of years. I think it's very normal right now to have people that used to be part of a scene coming back into it now, and maybe it's a different scene, maybe it's the same one. That's very, very typical, and you are definitely not going to be alone in that regard. But again, my advice is maybe don't go to a play party right away, maybe don't try to find a partner right away. Just go socialize, get a sense of the vibe, get a sense of if this is, like, the kind of group of people you want to be around. That's really something that I have been learning more about as I'm, like, branching out into, like, different communities. Just because a space is there doesn't mean it's a good space to be in. Just because there's a party to go to doesn't mean it's the right party to go to. You really gotta, I think, take things a little bit more slowly and evaluate, like, is this the kind of environment that I want to be around? What kind of play do they allow? Do they allow the use of intoxicating substances? Are people drunk there? Do they smoke? What's their, like, mask mandate policy? What's their vaccine policy? Like, whatever it is you might be concerned about in a space, like, take that time to really evaluate it. And, the longer you're in a scene in, like, a social sense, the more you're going to hear about, important people that maybe aren't so great, or venues that have a bad reputation that you might not know of otherwise. And it's good to have that information ahead of time before you start playing, versus going somewhere, having a bad experience, and then figuring out that is actually part of a pattern that person or place is known for after the fact. So, not to scare anyone off, just being, like, realistic that, unfortunately, there are people that either explicitly use BDSM as a way to kind of skirt rules of consent and kind of get away with doing things with slutty women or whatever. And there's also people that just sort of get too lost in the moment and kind of don't know how to control themselves and don't want to take responsibility for their own behavior, and just sort of are like, well, I can't help it. I was just too into it. You just look so sexy. You just look so submissive. I just can't blah, blah, blah. It's like, if you can't control your behavior, maybe you shouldn't be a top. That's my opinion. Maybe if you can't control your genitals, don't mess with other people's safety and well-being. Seems pretty obvious to me. Oh, to be clear, it's not that I care, but I definitely remember that as a topic of discussion in college. I mean, I kind of wonder if that's almost an urban legend. Like, Are there like pictures of middle-aged women reading like 50 Shades of Grey on the train, or did we just all like collectively hallucinate that happening and then being like, listen, look, because there's sort of this legitimate critique of like middle-aged women that were not raised in a society that like had robust notions of consent or like what healthy relationships were supposed to look like glorifying this like really terrible novel that's not only a terrible representation of a subculture that the writer didn't understand, but is also a really bad example of a relationship that's supposed to be romantic but is actually abusive. I'm just going to Google woman reading 50 Shades on train and just see if there's any actual pictures of this. Oh! Nope. Yeah, there's at least one picture of somebody reading. Which one is that? I think whatever the one has the tie on. I think that's 50 Shades Freed. Alright, there's just like... Okay, there's somebody who's not even reading it. They're just holding the book while standing on a subway platform. Like, okay, that's fine, I guess. Like, listen, I'd rather have someone reading 50 Shades of Grey in public than reading, like, I don't know, The Fountainhead or, like, Atlas Shrugged or, like, 10 Rules for Life, whatever the Jordan Peterson book is, you know. There's definitely other books I'd have more of an issue with than just like somebody privately reading this. Okay, so the point is there is at least one picture of a woman reading 50 Shades of Grey on a subway or on a train, and we probably all blew it up out of proportion because, as I was trying to get to, there is sort of this like legitimate, hey, this is kind of like disgusting glorification and misunderstanding and sort of, vanilla people like kind of using kink to spice up their lives as opposed to treating it as like a legitimate relationship practice. And then there's like women have sexual feelings about something that I don't personally, as a man, control. Disgusting. Get rid of it. Like there's sort of this sexist undertone that can go with it of like judging women for finding something erotically thrilling. And it's like, listen, I know you go home every night. And late at night, you go to the front page of Pornhub and you go to the teen category and there's pot meet kettle, right? If a woman can't read a chapter after work to unwind on a long subway trip back to Queens or whatever the fuck, I just can't, like, if we're gonna critique people for their engagement and things, like, it's gotta be equal, okay? I'm not really arsed about men that, like, watch pornography or watch hentai or whatever, or play, like, sexy video games. I don't really care, and so I can't really care that much about women, reading a book. How dare she read a book? My God. The words, they're corrupting the women folk, making their souls impure. That's how it feels sometimes. It's a little bit like, we could cut down in the Puritan language, I feel like, and still be fine. I've softened on my opinion of 50 Shades of Grey over the years, like, especially when it first came out. When I think it was maybe the second book got published, or was it the first movie? It was right around, like, sort of the ending of the book trilogy and the beginning of the movie series, whatever order that came in. And that was around the time that I got started in the kink scene. And now I'm just going to have to Google the dates because I don't want to spread misinformation on my YouTube channel. So I have to refresh my memory again of what order things came out in. I know the books were 2011 to 20... so the first movie came out right around the time that I was getting started in the kink scene, and so it was a really, really big to-do. It was a really big point of conversation in the community, outside of the community. Like, my vanilla college roommate was talking about it. Like, it was something that was a really, really big moment in culture for not just the kink community, but, like, people everywhere, weirdly, somehow, for some reason. And so because of that, like, at first, I really, like, kind of bought into a lot of the more strong negative opinions of 50 Shades of Grey. really, really hammering home that it was bad representation, that it was a toxic relationship, that it was unhealthy and abusive, and, it was probably a bad idea to read it. And now that and that it shouldn't have ever even been published, it shouldn't have been made into a movie, it's horrible, it's awful, it's the worst thing ever, right? And now that it's been, years since sort of any main media around it has been released, except for sort of retellings of the books, I have softened my opinion to be like, well, okay, now that the dust has settled, we kind of can see how this has actually affected the kink community. And from what I can tell, we sort of have been left with this, group of people that found the kink community through 50 Shades of Grey. And then from there, they kind of split off into two camps, right? You have people that try out kink and then they go, oh, this isn't hot and sexy like in the books. And then they don't ever want to do it again. Or they only ever play in private, and so it's not really anyone's problem what happens there because they're not going to classes, they're not going to dungeons, there's not a way to intervene in their relationship in any way, so it's sort of a moot point. And then you have the people that found 50 Shades of Grey, either engage with the critiques or use it as a leaping off point into exploring their own interests, and then they became members of the community. And so with that in mind, I don't really think it's had a super large long-lasting negative impact because we've gotten so many community members from that have genuinely found something that's very, very important to them. And I wouldn't want to make fun of somebody for the way that they found kink. That's just everyone. I feel like the real hot take is that everyone has, to some extent, some degree of a weird entry point into kink. If you were going to tell a random vanilla person about it, be it fetishes you have in starting childhood, your earliest sexual fantasies or sexual memories, the games that you played in childhood, weird experimentation you want to do in the bedroom, porn that you've watched. There's almost some degree of embarrassment that happens in terms of well, this thing happened and I watched this one porn and then I discovered I had a bondage fetish. It's ever by no account, by no measure are most of our entries into the kink world to vanilla people normal. Unless it's well, we're a married couple and we've been together for 10 years and we just really thought, and I just really went, John, I've really been thinking if we want to reconnect in the holy union of our marriage, I think I should be your submissive wife and you should be my dominant husband. And he was a little bit reluctant at first, but that John, he just likes to see me smile. And so he agreed to be my dom. And, we wrote up a little contract we found online. It was super cute. And he made me a chore chart. And he spanks me with a hairbrush when I'm bad. Anyways, it's just very normal. It's a very, loving, godly marriage. I really think that our marriage is based on what God has designed for men and women. And I really think that we're living true to scripture. I think we're going to teach our children the same thing. Unless that's your fucking entry into kink is a monogamous, otherwise vanilla, Christian white marriage. Unless that's your entry point into kink, everything else is considered weird. And even that, for most Christians, would be weird. So even then, you're still abnormal even at the best possible point. So yeah, I'm gonna have to, I think her name's gonna be, let's see, his name's John. What should her name be? It needs to be a little bit biblical. Becca, maybe? Because Rebecca is a biblical character. And then my friends call me Becky, but to my husband, I'm Becca. That's the character, something like that. But anyways, that's my spiel on not judging people that are into 50 Shades of Grey. Now, of course, to be clear, do not clip me out of context. There are a lot of safety concerns around people that especially watch the movies and then decide to try kink because the movies are flogging on the stomach's an erotic idea, or putting somebody in a spreader bar and then forcibly flipping them over without warning. That's probably fine. There's definitely a lot of dangerous stuff that happens in the movies where safety and consent are not a discussion at all, and I don't think that's okay. But what I am trying to say is that a lot of people do find kink with 50 Shades being a gateway, And so they're able to really easily get into those conversations about consent, negotiations, safe words, aftercare, things that aren't mentioned in the books, and then go, oh, okay, because it's so, like, now we've had such a strong immune response to 50 Shades of Grey that if you Google it, if you do any level of research on, like, people's opinions about it, you're going to get introduced to those concepts. So I'm a little bit, like, less worried about it, other than the people that, of course, we would have no way to even know what's happening to them. We would have no way to interact with them or teach them better, because they only ever do stuff in private, in their monogamous closed relationship, and they don't do research, they don't read, they don't even go to sex toy stores probably, and there's just sort of like, nothing you can really do either way about it. Esther, Deborah. I like Deborah. I think I'm going to stick with Deborah. I love Becky unironically. She sounds happy and Claire and John enjoy their dynamic. See, that's the thing though. It's like, I don't even think people like that are bad. They just exist in this like different bubble from me. Like Becca and John, they're happy, okay? Like they're happy, they're good, and they just have their happy Christian marriage. It's like a little bit, it's a little bit different. And as long as they're not like transphobic or whatever, like I don't really care. Just don't be a hater and you're probably fine in my book. But yeah, that's the way to go. Listen, as often as Christian values and BDSM interact, the John and Becky characters are going to show up. Sex toy stores are way overpriced for things you can get elsewhere. I mean, yeah, for some things. I think if you go to like a really nice like boutique, like if you're going to like Shebop or Spectrum Boutique or is it Purple Passions? There's a couple ones that are in New York. It can be a really good way of seeing higher end like luxury sex toys in person and like seeing how big it is or seeing what the settings are or like feel how a pair of cuffs feel in real life. And all that can be really valuable information before deciding to make a, fairly expensive, intimate purchase. And so I think they're really good for that. But yeah, there's a lot of places, that are very much culprits of, I think Adam and Eve does this a fair bit, where they have toys that the list price is pretty high, but then they always have a sale where it looks cheaper than it really is. And then there's like weird limitations on the coupon. So you can spend like, the toys listed at $75 and you get on a discount where you can get $25 off. But then the discount says up to $25 on toys over $100 and toys 70 below only get $10 off. Like it's like some kind of fucking like high level, like Ferengi accounting going on with the numbers to be able to make a profit. And that I don't appreciate. But there's a lot more ethical, I think, boutiques that are also, I think, a really great way for people to, find things in person that can be difficult to shop for online, like trying to find a strap-on harness or finding a packer or, finding, a bunch of like gender affirming stuff that can be hard to find online that maybe you would want to see in person first before you bought it. And I think all that's really great. So. All right, let's get back into questions. Well, see, this is why I have to ask questions early, because I just go, okay? You can't stop me. Also, I remember the term mommy porn entering the zeitgeist at that time. That was a double take. Is that still a thing? I feel like people still kind of shit on like mommy blogs and like mommy porn. And I sort of, again, I have like sort of two minds about this, where on the one hand, specifically with mommy blogs, there's this kind of subset of mommy blogs where they kind of tell you to like not trust doctors and that like everything you need to find to heal your child can be found in nature. And it's like, okay, then we should just get rid of penicillin? Like, what's your point? And like they kind of go really far off into the woods of this like mother knows best intuition stuff, where I'm like, maybe we could just, the study of medicine probably has been important for human development, but I guess if you don't want to believe in, sanitizing your baby bottles or whatever, okay, that's, oh, sure, why not? Can't stop you. Okay. Or actually, this does kind of remind me. Speaking of mommy bloggers, I do remember there was the very end of 50 Shades of Freed. Actually, Freed, the version from Christian's perspective. I don't think this is actually in the one written from Anna's perspective. There's a point at the very end in the epilogue where they describe how Anna has had their first child. Teddy, I think is his name. That seems. I think it was Teddy. I don't even know how I remember that, but I think it was Teddy. And anyways, we're just going to call him Teddy. So Teddy is co-sleeping with them in their bed. And then later he's put in a crib, and he's an infant, right? He's like maybe a month or two old, I think, at this point in the books from what they describe. I think he's literally maybe a month old. And so he's in a crib by himself in a different room that has blankets in it and soft toys. And listen, I'm not a parent, but I babysat neighbors' kids. I took babysitter training. I primarily babysat a younger girl that had special needs. And, putting an infant in a closed door room with a bunch of blankets and soft objects around them when they can't even, like, fully control where their bodies are at in terms of, like, if something falls on them, they don't have the body strength to move it. Like, and I think I made a comment about, co-sleeping is not recommended by, it's not recommended by the CDC. It's not recommended by the NHS. It's not recommended, I think, by any major healthcare organization. And there's things you can do to, like, make co-sleeping safer, because sometimes it works. But, like, I made a comment about, like, the fact that, it's really concerning that there's all these safety issues throughout the whole book with BDSM. And then the one thing that you think that E.L. James would know as the mother of 3 children is she then has multiple scenes where Anna, who is like 22 at this point, I think maybe 21. Other than she drinks she must be 22. So she's 22 at this point in the series. She has a new baby. And she has a nanny but refuses to listen to her because she wants to do everything on her own. Because that's such an Anna thing. Oh my God. Anna is so independent, guys. And so she doesn't want to listen to any advice of the nanny at all. And so the baby co-sleeps with them with all the blankets and the pillows and everything else. And then also has the separate room with the door closed and all the soft things. And it's like, was this just how parenting was in the 70s? Did we just put cigarettes in the crib as well? Like, what was the deal there? And so I made a comment about that. Oh my God, the mommy bloggers got so mad at me. They're like, co-sleeping is perfectly safe. The CDC is lying to you about how unsafe co-sleeping is. Like, listen, like, I don't know. I'm just saying what the government said. Just leave me alone. Like, the mommy bloggers got so mad. But the mommy porn comment, I think, that to me, rather than I think being legitimate concern over, like, overemphasis on, like, mommy knows best type logic is, or women's intuition. Hey, I have a question for women who say that. Do trans women get women's intuition, or, like, how much estrogen do you have to have in your system before you get women's intuition? I just, like, can we get a standard on when and how that happens? The mommy porn thing really just comes across as, like, shaming women, especially older women, for daring to be sexual, even though we know that statistically women tend to get progressively, I'm trying to think of how to phrase this, they are have a higher sex drive. Generally, over the course of the lifespan, it can fluctuate around menopause, but then, like, after menopause, it even tends to go up as well. So we sort of stereotype the fact that we think 16-year-olds should be the horniest people on the planet, but the only reason we think that is because we think of teenage boys, whereas, like, women's sex drive over time, by age, changes, and oh my God, this is so crazy. Wait, what? Okay, there's a chart here. And I'm trying to, is this real? Okay, no, this can't be real. Listen, you can't believe what you see on Google. But I definitely just saw, okay, no, this must be, oh, this was, oh, for single people, a proportion of single people who prefer rough sex. The older the person gets, for men, the more they prefer rough sex. So under 10% of 18-year-olds that are single prefer rough sex, where over 50% of men past 60 prefer rough sex. Like, what? Explain that, please. Whereas for women, it peaks in the early 20s at about 15%, and then it goes down every year after that. That seems like that needs more data around it. Okay, where is the... I know I've seen... over age. I don't know how to phrase this. I know that I've seen this before. Okay. Encyclopedia of Sexuality may have an answer to this. I don't know how legit this is, but it is showing that women get higher sex drive approaching their 30s and 40s, and then it drops off again after menopause. I could have sworn that I saw it increases after menopause, but I don't know. Kinkiness increases with age, though apparently only for men. Okay, I can't, like... I can't... Why can't I find this? I know that I've seen this. Women are 2 to 3 times more likely to be affected by a decline in sex drive. Reduced sex drive becomes more common in women starting in their 40s and 50s. Okay, here's WebMD. That's, women in the 30s and 40s. This time of life may be your sex drive is strongest. One study showed that women between 27 and 45, I mean, hey, I'm getting there. Maybe there's hope for me yet as an asexual. Had more frequent and more intense sexual fantasies than younger or older women. They also had more sex and were more likely to have it sooner in a relationship. Interesting. The more you know. All right. Bullshit data aside, let us continue into the questions, because I have sadly not answered that many so far, I don't think. Yeah, mommy porn. Okay. Yeah, just, like, don't shame women for being into sex. Like, we just sort of believe that after, like, 25, women shouldn't be allowed to have a sexuality. We're like, listen, you're old now. Not in terms of we're just saying that, like, in terms of primal human genetics, you're too old to be sexy, so stop having a sex drive. That's literally the logic, I feel like, sometimes. Did we just check WebMD and not leave with a cancer diagnosis? Yes. I am very good at checking WebMD and not even going anywhere near cancer at this point. All right, I think I need a tissue. Give me 1 second. My allergies are just crazy here. Oh my god, I literally wake up every morning and I have just, like, the worst allergies. I have to take allergy medicine every morning. I'm not a fan. 0 out of 10. I'm also very sleepy, which might be because of the allergy medication. Though I thought it's supposed to be non-drowsy. I don't believe that. I don't believe it. I think we're being good so far today. I don't think we've, gotten anyone in, no cancellations, I don't think I've had to kick anyone off. It's been good. I have a rather off-topic question first. But how to get over Dom imposter syndrome. That is very on topic. Totally, we can talk about this. I have Dom partners in scenes for the first time recently and have enjoyed it so far, but have been getting imposter syndrome over it. My partners will call me daddy and things like that, and it's hard not to feel like I don't deserve the title because I lack experience and age. Well, that is a very common experience. I'm sure that other people in the chat that have gone through things like this will very much be like, I get where that comes from. I personally think I would look about it from the perspective of, like, having a little bit of imposter syndrome can be a good thing because it means that you're concerned about like not wanting to play outside your skill set, not wanting to push boundaries, and you're playing and acting in a little bit more of a reserved way, which I think is sort of the better approach of like the opposite by comparison, which is like not restraining yourself on anything and then just like acting like you can do whatever because you're a dom now and whatever you do is right, and like that's not how that works. So can we just slow down a little bit? So I think that having a little bit of imposter syndrome is actually a good sign that you're trying to be a dom in like an ethical, moral fashion and staying inside of those boundaries and not like, you know, breaking consent or pushing anyone too far. So I think on one hand, okay, that's probably a good thing. I also understand that it can impact your ability to fully enjoy things when you're in your head and thinking, I'm not really that good at this, I don't deserve this, I'm not experienced enough, I don't know enough. And I think it's really, or sort of more of like, I guess, a CBT, not in the cock and ball torture way, but in the cognitive behavioral therapy way. You can kind of try to attack this from changing the way that you respond to things internally. So if you feel yourself getting that thought of like, I don't deserve this because I'm not experienced enough or I'm not old enough yet to really earn this yet, replace that with a more positive thought. You can replace that with like, hey, like I know my partners really enjoy this and they've told me so. And that's the part that matters, right? You don't necessarily have to, you know, be like, I am experienced enough or I am old enough. Like I would just counter it with a positive thought that's definitively true and is like, this is something somebody else told me. This is the feedback I'm getting. I know I'm having a good time. I know the people I'm with them having a good time. And that's the important part. And then just like keep learning, right? Just keep growing, keep going to classes, keep practicing. And then you can also tell yourself that you are trying, you are learning, and it's not experience that makes the dom. I think there are a lot of doms actually, because of the amount of experience they think they have, get a little bit cocky, get a little bit pushy, go a little bit too far, and it's better to kind of rein it in and know what you don't know and be more dedicated to playing with inside your skill set. So it's not about sheer experience, it's not about sheer age, and just reminding yourself, you know, that like, you know, just because a dom's in his 50s doesn't make him a better dom than you. Just because somebody's been in the scene for 5 years does not mean they know what they're talking about. Like, you can't take anything for granted when it comes to kink. You can't just say, I've been doing BDSM for 5 years. That doesn't mean they've been having good scenes. It doesn't mean that they've been doing ethical BDSM. It doesn't mean that their partners are having a good time. Like, there's so much in that you don't really know, and it's about like the actual qualitative experience of what you're doing, not just like the sheer numbers. But also at the same time, like, it may be, you know, worth considering for you if the title of daddy feels really important to you and you feel like you haven't worked your way up to that as a dom. Is there an alternative you might feel more comfortable with using instead, knowing that like getting to the role of like feeling daddy is the goal, and maybe kind of doing something else in the meantime that feels like more honest, you know? Because I think it's one thing if you are like playing the role in the scene and you can kind of say, well, I'm just playing this role, this isn't who I am, versus like if you're doing something a little bit more 24/7 and your partner is calling you daddy outside of a scene, then I think it's a lot easier to get to that place of like, oh, that's not really me yet, I'm not really there yet. And that's fine. Like, you don't have to be ready for that level of being a dom yet. I think this is something that we talk about more with like submissives, and like you don't have to go right to slave. You don't have to go right to 24/7 live in submissive. You don't have to go right to, you know, property or something. And the same is also true for doms. Like, if you don't feel right using a certain title yet and you feel like I'm not where I want to be to use this title, that's fine. You know, find something else that works. Don't constrain yourself. Or maybe you decide that, you know, that's okay if you call me that in a scene, but if we're going to have a relationship where you call me that, you know, I want to kind of work on that first before we start using that title. I guess dogs can get pins and needles. I didn't think they could, but maybe they can. Hello, Miss Evie. How are you doing today? I went and I got my nails done. Ooh, what did you get your nails done as? I did my own nails recently. You guys want to see? I don't know if the light's really there. Oh, God. That wasn't what I wanted at all. How do I do this? I feel like the light's the opposite of the way that I want for this. I don't really know how to. Give me a second. I'll figure it out, okay? Because they're black, and so you can't really see them if I don't, like, you know. Oh my god, this is so bright. I hope this works. So there we go. That works. I have, like, my nails are not even. I'm currently rocking the, you know, 2 short nails, 3 long nails look, as is often the case with me. But they're black, and they're, like, sparkly, and they're really fun to do. They took a really long time to dry, but I did my own nails, so there you go. Those are my nails. I hope you got pretty nails done. I got a pedicure done for my birthday. That was really fun. That was, like, what I did for my birthdays. I went and got a pedicure. But pedicures last for forever. I don't generally, like, get manicures done at salons very often because they cost so freaking much, and the nail polish always chips off, and so they don't really last very long, and I'm always disappointed. I'd rather just do it at home and, like, watch a movie, you know. That's my technique. Do you think we as a society, we should try to discuss not having casual sex if you are aware of unresolved trauma or do not feel comfortable advocating for yourself? Or do you think it will always be interpreted as a form of shaming for various reasons or trying to control people's sex lives? That's interesting. I mean, I think it will be interpreted as, like, a form of trying to control people's sex lives, because even if it's good advice, you are still telling somebody, hey, I don't think you're ready for this yet. I think, I wish we could move into a place as a society where we could have conversations about, like, you know, maybe more framing it as, like, these factors make this more risky for you and these factors make it less risky. Like, we could frame it as, like, you have, like, a risk budget, right? And you get to decide what that risk budget is, but having unresolved trauma is a pretty big one in the potential risk bucket. And you can decide if you're willing to play with that or not. And some people are going to be like, yeah, totally, I really like having casual sex. I don't feel, because also, like, if you're dealing with unresolved trauma, you know, and I'm an ace person, so I don't fully relate to this, but from non-ace people in my life that have told me this, having sex with another human being can be really, like, physically important, like, to the point of it, like, borderline being a biological need. And if you're dealing with a place of, like, unresolved trauma from, like, an abusive relationship, you might not be ready to, like, wait to find somebody, go on some dates, establish a relationship, be in a romantic relationship, and then have sex. Like, you might actually not be in a place where you can really be a romantic partner for someone, even if you do want to have sex. And so it might actually be better for both parties involved, where you get to have these, like, needs met, these really important wants met, let's say. And then, you know, you don't necessarily have the emotional connection of a deeper relationship that maybe you're not currently prepared for. But at the same time, definitely having certain types of unresolved trauma, I think, could make, you know, having casual sex more risky in terms of, like, activating a, you know, conditioned freeze response, or not feeling secure at advocating for your needs during sex, not feeling secure in being able to say no, the risk of being triggered in some other way during an intimate encounter. Like, there's certainly a lot of things to be aware of when it comes to, like, how trauma can affect your ability to have an intimate relationship, be that a longer term relationship or just a one-time casual hookup. But I think there's a balance to strike between, like, sweetie, sweaty, you shouldn't be having casual sex because you're crazy, versus, like, what I think is a healthier approach, which is, like, hey, like, you can have casual sex if you choose to. You can engage in hookups, but here's some things to be aware of that might make it a little bit more risky for you. And here's some things we can do to, like, help you work with that and, like, improve those things. So it's about, like, giving advice and giving options and allowing that person to have awareness in their choice, I think. And I think, you know, it's difficult because I think a lot of the people who say stuff like this about, like, well, if you don't feel like you can say no, you shouldn't be having sex. Because when you look at polls, like, look at the data that I've seen, a general survey of the population, 96 to 98% of people feel confident in their ability to say no. This is not kinky people. These are not people that are necessarily, in their 40s that have 20 plus years of sexual experience. This is, not people that are in any way like necessarily more like privileged or advantaged in other groups. Like, it's just a general survey of the population. And, virtually 100% of people will say on a survey that they think they can say no. They think they can tell someone to stop doing something. So you can't go around and say, well, if you don't think you can say no, you shouldn't be having sex, because almost everyone thinks they can say no. Like, that's what the stats say. And so you can't frame it that way, where it's just like, well, if you can't be an advocate for yourself, don't have sex, because most people don't think that way. It's like what happens in the moment is very different, and that's the problem. In terms of like how aggressive and violent your partner might seem, if you're legitimately afraid for your safety, if you're afraid they might stalk you afterwards, try to harm you later, you don't know how they're going to react when they say no. Like, there's lots and lots of factors in that. But then that leads into the other point of like, well, if you can't trust someone, you shouldn't be having sex with them. And then it's like, well, do we expect that of men? Like it's always this like focus on like, well, if women don't want to get hurt, they should wait until they fully trust someone before having sex with them. When the reality is that like a lot of the worst, and I'm not sure what the proportion is between like strangers and intimate partners, but certainly women in long-term intimate partner relationships, like even after they develop trust, that's oftentimes when abuse cycles start. That's oftentimes when violence escalates, when the relationship becomes more like entrenched and like harder to remove yourself from. So, you can't just you can always come up with these arguments about like, well, you should do this and you should do this and you should do that. And it's very often said, it is sometimes said in this very victim blamey, very negative way, where it's like always your fault for not knowing the right thing or not doing the right thing. And that like, if you can't do this, you shouldn't do this. And, that is not the direction I want to go in, because those kinds of really strict authoritative statements aren't helpful. What is more helpful is saying like, if you don't feel confident saying no yet, here's some things you can do to develop your confidence. Just telling people, well, if you can't say no, you should never have sex with people. It just puts people in a place of despair. It makes them, because people that are in those sorts of mental mindsets where they think, I can't stand up for myself, I don't have a good sense of boundaries, I was an enmeshed child with my parents, so I wasn't allowed to have, robust boundaries, or I was just in a really enmeshed relationship for a decade and I forgot what boundaries were and I'm trying to relearn that. Like, it can be really difficult to, like, hear that and go, like, there's hope for me and I can have sex. Because what ends up happening when people hear those sentiments of, like, if you can never do this, you'll never be able to do that, is it leaves people feeling trapped. It leaves people feeling like they have no options. And so they're more likely to engage in risky behavior anyways, because they're like, well, whatever, like, there's no hope anyways, like, bad things are just going to happen, oh well. Like, and we don't want to do that, right? We want to put people in a position where they can recognize areas that maybe they have room to grow for their own happiness. And we can help them with that. And here's some suggestions to help with that. So that way you can have better sex. You can have better relationships. Not that you have to do this as like in order to get your sex license, you must pass this exam that says you're this good at being able to say no. Like, that's crazy. Because also, like, the other part of that equation is we're never putting it on the other person to like check in or interpret body language or stop the sex themselves if something seems off or wrong. And I think people, maybe people get really in their head or they get lost in the moment or something. But I really, really think that oftentimes when people are really strongly like internally saying no to sex, even when they can't verbally say no, their body is probably putting out a lot of signs that say no. Trying to keep, body parts close together to the body, trying to curl up and get small, defensive posturing, not making eye contact, refusing kisses. Like, there's lots of things that people can do to non-verbally try to say no that many people choose to overlook because they want to be able to say, or they think they can say, well, she never said no, so how was I supposed to know that, she didn't want it anymore. And I'm using like female pronouns for this. I'm using she, her pronouns for this. But to be clear, You know, this happens to men as well, although I think the way the problems manifest are different in a significant enough way to where it's worth sort of a separate discussion. But you know, they happen in a different enough way. You know, and certainly with women, it happens in this way where there can be a lot of this very like strong nonverbal saying no. Not always, but it can happen. And I'm more trying to say that, you know, people sort of think that like the only way you'd ever be able to tell if sex was bad is if somebody just directly said no, when oftentimes if the other person isn't enjoying it, is trying to say no, is in pain and wants you to stop, even if they don't say no, they're probably putting off a lot of signals. And you know, if you're somebody who's neurotypical or non-neurotypical, you won't be able to pick up on this stuff. And I am not, you know, blaming people that, you know, aren't neurotypical for this, but I'm more speaking for a general population, which is, you know, you can't always just say, well, she never said no and everything else was totally fine, because there were probably things you purposely overlooked or discounted because you wanted to be able to keep going, and that's like really shitty. But yeah, I think, you know, also as well, when you're dealing, you know, kind of getting back to the question of like, can you encourage people to, you know, not have casual sex if they have unresolved trauma, or is that always going to be interpreted as a form of shaming? Like, you have to kind of also think about the fact that when you, oh my gosh, there's like 2 little hummingbirds outside my house. What are they doing? So cute. Okay. When you have people that are in a part of the traumatized population, you know, and especially if it's a very recent trauma, they are going to be more easily emotionally activated and responsive in a defensive manner as a result of that. And so I think it's very natural, you know, we should expect that if we are directly, especially telling an individual person, not necessarily making general statements, but saying, I don't think that you should be having casual sex because you have this trauma, and I don't think you can advocate for yourself. You know, that would be a horrible way of phrasing it, but, you know, if you said something to that effect, I think someone that's already experiencing trauma, i.e., a loss of autonomy, other people trying to control them potentially, that could be really activating for them, and they are going to feel very defensive as a result. So you have to be very careful, especially when you're trying to have those conversations where it's not about, I think you need to do this, you should do this, you should do that, you shouldn't do that. Like, it's about encouraging people to choose from many informed choices, and allowing them to do that for the sake of developing a robust sense of autonomy. Because I also think at the same time, if you're trying to undermine people's autonomy by saying them, you're not allowed to do this, you can't do this, if you can't say no, you're not allowed to have, if you are not 100% sure you can say no, you should never have sex. Like, if you're kind of giving those sorts of ultimatums, that's undermining someone's personal sense of autonomy and control, because other people are placing limitations on what's okay for them to do. I think it's better to give more opportunities to encourage autonomy, where people can learn how to make their own decisions and own their own decisions. And I think that's important, to give those opportunities, again, in an informed way, where you're sharing, like, here's some things maybe to consider, you know, as we're having a conversation about this. Evie, what is your opinion on soaking canes in water? I know this definitely adds to the sting. I don't really play with natural fiber canes. I play with, I think it's, how do you pronounce it? Is it Darlin? Darlin? I don't know how to actually, Delrin, I think is what it is. And an acrylic. And so, I've never used a natural fiber cane in water. My understanding is they do make them more intense, but depending on how long the soaking goes on for, I think it can also make the cane more likely to break. Again, that's me completely off the cuff. I've done research about this, but I don't remember all the specifics. So Anytime you're modifying a natural material, adding water to it or burning it over an open fire or something, you are modifying the material and you are altering what the breaking strength of the material is, which might make it more likely that it could break during the scene. And that's really going to be, I think, the main safety concern there is going to be like, is this going to break? Can it cause splinters? That sort of thing. But, if you're using, don't use like green bamboo for a cane. I'm talking about, to the more traditional cane rod implements that, you'd find on Etsy or something. Can we talk about unicorning negotiations? Say if the couple/dom wants exclusivity from unicorn, but only E&M, not poly, and the unicorn wants an open relationship if it's not poly? Okay, whoa, there's a lot of different words in there. All right, let's slow down here a little bit. Sort of interesting, sort of the separation between ethical non-monogamy and poly in there. I would consider a triad relationship by its like foundation to be polyamory. But I guess if you're talking about like the unicorn only being there for sex purposes and like not romantically, I think there is a case where you could find a unicorn that does want to have exclusivity with the couple. But I think that works best if it goes both ways, where the couple is exclusive to within the triad and the unicorn is exclusive to within the triad. And, there's not a lot of like, we're allowed to do whatever we want, but you have to only be loyal to us. Like, that's just going to be like, no one's going to want to be in that scenario unless it's like a submissive fetish control thing, more or less, basically. I mean, by very much a large margin, I would say. So I think you can have the expectation of, what I would call a polyfidelis arrangement or a closed, like multiple partner arrangement, where you have multiple people, i.e. more than two, in a relationship together with each other, but they're not bringing in additional outside parties. There's not other ongoing dating or hookups or anything else. It's just, we have our closed unit and we're together as a unit. But I don't think you can unilaterally say as the couple or as the dom, you're going to be exclusive to us, but we're not going to do the same thing for you in return. That just feels really unfair in a way that I don't think most unicorns would be okay with, unless, again, it's sort of maybe like a fetish or a power thing. And the unicorn wants an open relationship if it's not poly. So are you saying that the unicorn wants an open relationship if they're not romantically involved with the couple? Yeah, okay, here's the deal. If you're not romantically involved with someone, you don't get to control their romantic relationships. Even if you are involved with them romantically, you get more of a say, but you still can't control them. So if you are literally treating a unicorn as a unicorn and you're using them for group sex, you do not get to tell them you can't date anyone else. I honestly don't even care if it's BDSM or not. That just feels really deeply unfair. I can see that maybe happening with like certain femdom relationships where it's like, I control your penis and you're not allowed to stray from me. But like if the unicorn wants to have romance in their lives, if they want to be romantically bonded to someone, they're allowed to want that, like you can't say, well, actually, sorry, you're gonna have to be entirely fulfilled by our relationship and not look for love anywhere else, even though we're not going to give you any love and you're only here for sex. Like, what? That just doesn't make any logical sense. That's not a relationship that would like exist in the real world, Oh my goodness. Yeah, you got it. Like, I want a triad, but they want me as like a lower rank third. I mean, okay, listen, this isn't Demon Slayer, all right? There's no like lower and upper ranks. Like, sorry, I had to make the anime joke, all right? I had to. But yeah, that I think is, if it's your relationship and you're kind of coming in there as the unicorn, the couple that wants you to be, they want you as the unicorn. They can't tell you you're not allowed to not date anyone else, and you're also not allowed to have sex with anyone else if you're going to be with us, and we're not going to be exclusive with you. That's just like really unfair. So I want to date outside the group because like I want my own opportunities too, right? Yes, you are absolutely allowed to have your own opportunities, and having like one-way open relationships, like unless one person is monogamous and one person is poly, it's not gonna, like, having that is not gonna work, because then that, like, then it's, well, then again, I guess they're saying they're not poly, so I mean, okay, like, but like if you're thinking in terms of poly or most ethical non-monogamy, expecting exclusivity on only one side is very unfair and like defeats the purpose, because then they're just trying to control you, and that's like not fair. Like, if they're concerned about your sexual health or your safety or your availability for them, that's like their problem. And if they don't trust you that much, they shouldn't be trying to pursue a super closed relationship with you, honestly. This sounds like the relationship Onision was looking for. God damn it, that's true. You're right. He's like, listen, I want to have a harem, but all of you are supposed to be completely sexually bonded to me and also have sex with my wife / my husband. Thank you for your thoughts on this. I know people in my life who I'm so scared of getting hurt. Yeah, exactly. I get it, for sure. Yeah, there's just like, there's a way to sort of gently tell them, hey, I'm concerned about this, and I want to make sure that you're thinking about this, and maybe we can have a conversation about it without being like overbearing and controlling. And like, you know your friend, right? You know, or just people in your life, not even necessarily your friend. And you're going to understand how to navigate that better than I would be, for who they are as individuals. But there's a way to thread that needle. Oh my god. Back when I subbed, I had 2 different doms break up when they found out poly included me being poly. What is this phenomenon of people being like, poly for me, not for thee. I get to date around. You have to stay at home. I get to have sex with strangers. You're not allowed to do that. Like, what? Like, if you're dating somebody who wants to be in an open relationship, it's probably because they also want to have multiple partners. Like, I don't think I've heard anyone that like wants to be in a multi-partner relationship where they don't want to date multiple people. They're like, yeah, I want to be dating one person and I want my partner to date like a bunch of other people. Like, I guess that, you know, unless they're like have a very like, I don't know, broad interpretation of like a cuckolding fetish maybe. But outside of that, that's really, really not common for most people. All right. All right. Next question. I'm trying really hard not to just ramble for 20 minutes about every single answer I give. Oh my god, there's so many. What the fuck is happening? Oh my god, YouTube is being really hardcore with blocking comments today, and I'm sorry, I don't know why. I'm trying to unblock all of them, and I don't know if I've gotten to all of them yet. I'm trying though. Ooh, congrats, Kendall. I just got a job. As a trans person, I'm looking forward to being able to afford binders, packers, and things. Yeah, you go. Awesome. You know, I recently saw a trans person out and proud working at Home Depot. So you know what? There's a way. There is certainly a way, and I'm happy to see it. Also at the hardware store, there's a lot of like, for where there's like every single time I go somewhere, like you'd think it'd be very stereotypically masculine, and then like half the people who are working there are like out like wearing a like trans pride flag like level of proud. This was in June, so I guess it was Pride Month. You know, out, proud, open, like queer and trans people working at hardware stores and Home Depot. It's great. I love it. Mm. Are there things you have trouble finding for kink that maybe you can only find online? Oh, a lot of stuff. Most medical play stuff, sharp stuff. You can get stuff from like medical, like supply stores in person. But generally speaking, if you're looking for like single-use sterile scalpels and most needles and like a lot of the more creative medical play equipment, most of that you're going to find online. Most electroplay toys you're probably only going to be able to find online. Oh, thank you.
Nancy
there we go.
$8.
Thank
Hello,
you.
Evie. Your content is structured and goal-oriented.
Yay,
Also,
that's what I go for.
I love the way that you are real with answering questions. Thank
Oh.
you for live streaming.
Yeah, I love live streaming. These are my favorite things. I love every single Friday. I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm about to have to talk for 2 hours. Can I even talk for 2 hours? Is that even possible? And then it just happens when I do it. And like yesterday, I filmed videos for like over 4 hours. And I was like, how did I do that? Like I just go into some altered mental state where I just talk. And then all my talking points are gone. And then I'm quiet for the rest of the weekend. But no, seriously, I am very happy. I try to give honest, realistic but kind answers, and I hope I do my best with interpreting people with what I think their questions are, because there is always can be some difficulty in accurately interpreting things for sure. But yeah, for stuff that's online, definitely a lot of pet play gear as well can be hard to find in real life. But definitely if you're going to like shop at a sex toy store, lots of bondage gear, obviously lots of sex toys if that's your thing, blindfolds, massage candles, lots of stuff that you can find for kink in person, but a lot of it is primarily going to be online actually. Yes, also very true. Most dungeons will have somebody with connections to obtain most equipment. Yes, definitely if you have a local dungeon, if you're like, where do I buy a St. Andrew's cross? How can I get a flogger like that? You know, people are either really happy to share where they've got things from most of the time. Don't interrupt them in the middle of a scene when they're using it though. Or talk to the dungeon and see where they got their furniture from if that's more what you're looking for. How do you set boundaries between you and your dom? A big thing is going on with my dom. Like he wants to dominate even the way I feel or think. Is that okay? Let me show you a book, Sheila. I think you're going to love it. I have a solution for you. I'm going to get it from my pile of books over here. Okay. I think I talked about this. I actually got this at She-Bop, so you can't actually get this from a sex toy store. Look at the way it matches my background, so you know it's the perfect book. It is called the Better Boundaries Workbook. It is based on CBT. There's a lot of similar principles as this in DBT workbooks, as well as far as like establishing like boundaries with people in like a respectful manner. So also if you have like a DBT workbook, there's probably going to be similar content in this. But this is from Sharon Martin, who is a master's of social work and a licensed clinical social worker. That's what MSW and LSSW stands for. And this book will help you overcome feelings of fear and guilt when communicating your limits, set boundaries with technology, texting, and social media, protect yourself from exploitative and difficult people, and cultivate healthy and balanced relationships. This is obviously not written with power exchange in mind, but it is a workbook, so there are definitely things that you can fill out in here, or you can just like read through it, and that's pretty much what I do. I'm left-handed, so filling out books like this is like, it's a no-go. It's not possible. But, you know, it's more like you can do like kind of thought experiments to yourself. Like, you know, for example, maybe let's see, maybe this is something for your partner to think about, I suppose, because the section I opened to is called Why It's So Hard to Accept Other People's Boundaries. So the first question is like, how do you feel when someone sets a limit that you don't like or tells you no? And then how do you usually behave in that kind of situation? And then think of a boundary that's particularly painful for you. Does your reaction to this boundary seem justified? If not, can you think of how this boundary might be connected to a past experience? So there's a lot of really good thought processes in here, both for you as somebody trying to establish boundaries and maybe for someone that is trying to overstep and either kind of, you know, lawnmower away somebody else's boundaries, or just sort of be like, you're not allowed to have that boundary because you're a submissive. Because especially when it comes to emotions, let's look at what like the best possible interpretation of like his emotions and like reaction to this is a lot of doms think either subconsciously or they try to be out of a genuine desire to be helpful. They try to get rid of and dom other people's emotions out of them. This does not work. For some people, for certain submissives, it can be helpful on a temporary basis to have somebody like beat the bad feelings out of you. But when you don't want that and that's not helpful for you, it can actually make things worse to have someone try to control your emotions. And that can be for a lot of reasons you would have to explore for yourself. Like, why is it I have that reaction to my emotions being controlled? Is it because you feel upset that they don't trust you to be able to control your own emotions? You feel ashamed about having such a noticeable emotional outburst. You feel like your partner doesn't like you because they don't like your emotions. Like, there could be lots of reasons for having that particular reaction, or just like you don't want to be controlled in that area and they're not allowed to dom your emotions. It's almost like, some people can be so uncomfortable with other people's discomfort that they try to leap in a way that actually isn't helpful to try and get rid of it, right? They think, oh my God, you're in pain, you're having this bad emotion here, I need to stop it by any means necessary, and so I'm going to interfere in a way that maybe isn't really helpful and also like damages your sense of autonomy and well-being in this relationship because it makes me so uncomfortable to be around your negative emotions. And so you have to kind of, again, think about the motivations for like, okay, why is it he's trying to make you not feel a certain way? Could it be coming from a genuine place of like, I know you're struggling with mental health, I'm just trying to help, I thought that using BDSM in this way could be good for, you, it could be helpful for our relationship? Or is it that they have kind of underlying assumptions about feelings where they are so uncomfortable being around any level of negative feeling that they try to stamp it out in a way that might not actually be helpful for you? And also with the thinking, you can't dom someone's thoughts. Every dom I know that is in an MS relationship knows this. You cannot dominate someone's thoughts, but you can expect certain behaviors or actions. So there's a really great series of books that are by Raven Caldera and Joshua Tenpenny that are about dominance and submissives, two separate books that deal with mental health struggles of various degrees and kinds. And in that, they talk a lot about how you can't like make someone feel a certain way internally. You're not God, you're probably not a therapist. Even if you are, you would know you can't magically make someone feel something different. And trying to force them to is probably going to result in the opposite of what you want. However, you can still set expectations for behavior. Like, just because you're angry doesn't mean that you get to slam the plate on the table, right? You still have to act in a respectful manner, even if your emotions are running really high. Like not being allowed to slam doors, or not being allowed to scream, or not throwing things across the room. Because those become boundaries for that other person where you can't do this with my things. Or if you're doing this in my space, that makes me uncomfortable and that makes me feel unsafe. So there are things you can do where it's like, I can't control you feeling happy or not, or feeling angry or not, but I can have certain expectations of how, as a submissive, you're going to act around me, even if your feelings are something different in the moment. So, yeah, this is why BDSM as therapy is a nice idea until it goes wrong. Yeah, and like sometimes it's genuinely people trying to help, and sometimes it's really not gonna work, Evie just described my partner who kind of destroyed the commune I joined. Oh no! Well, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to, but you know what? Sometimes my examples get inspired by real things in the universe, I suppose. But yeah, I think you need to have a conversation with your dom around where the boundaries of your relationship realistically can be. Because this is not a like, if you were really domly enough, you could do this. Or if I was submissive enough, I would allow you to do this. I think I've only maybe heard of one person in the whole time I've been in the kink scene where like they can be so submissive that their dom can dominate their feelings. That is not how most DS relationships work. That's not how people work in general. So just be careful. Definitely have that conversation,
Jonathan
but it can be
donated
complicated.
$8. Hey Evie, thank you for all that you
Aw,
do.
you're
Your
welcome.
videos are what gave me the inspiration to follow this path and be true to myself. And your live streams are my refuge 3 times a week.
Well, I am so glad to be here for you, Jonathan. I know I always very much appreciate you being here for my live streams, and I am glad that we get to hang out for like, I can't believe I live stream 6 hours a week. I feel like sometimes it's more than that, to be honest. I definitely can go late with the Thursday streams because I ramble a lot. But it's going to be more than that this week. It's going to be like, we're going to be streaming for probably like 10 hours this week. It's going to be a lot. Oh, that's not even open. Listen, I'm not a perfect person. I definitely need more water, but you know what? I have like 15 minutes. I can get water later. But definitely, I'm gonna kind of be scanning for follow-ups from you, Sheila, because I definitely think we should follow up more on that. But let me know. Yes, Caldera's negotiating power dynamics. Yes, I forgot about that, but that is also a really great one. I'm not familiar with Gym Camp Start With No, but I love the title of that. So that sounds like a good suggestion. And then also, if you prefer more of the self-help workbook format, especially if you've done any DBT work before, it's going to be really familiar and accessible for you. So definitely recommend this. And again, if you've done any sort of DBT work before, if you have like a DBT workbook, there will be definitely like boundaries in here. So let me see if I can find if there's like a section. Boundary skills with difficult people, chapter 11. I would certainly say a controlling dom could be a difficult person. So, you know, I think this is mostly for people that are like liars and cheaters and stuff. So, you know, that's probably not always the... Ooh, boundary skills with your partner. That's a whole section. So what chapter is this? 8? Yep, chapter 8. Boundary skills with your partner. So there definitely is that information in there. And actually for anyone, that needs help with boundaries, especially again, if you were in an enmeshed like parent-child relationship or an abusive relationship, or you were like a parentified child, like if you had any kind of like attachment trauma growing up and you had difficulty establishing like appropriate boundaries with caregivers or with like early, influential adults in your life or with early relationships, really recommend boundary work is a highly good thing for most people, I would say. I think my intuitive empathy has more to do with cishets being unstable and needing to read them to survive. I mean, it is, women's intuition could literally just be survival instinct. I would believe it. Indeed, the phrase really was to shame older women for having sexual interest, but why they chose that term, I don't really know. I mean, I just assume the term mommy porn came from the term mommy blogger, because that was also sort of around at the same time. But I'm not always sure. I remember listening to sex workers in an interview saying teenagers and younger men were too inexperienced. Middle-aged men and professionals were way too rough, and older men were the gentlest / best. I mean, maybe it's like perception of roughness is different. Maybe when you're older, you like want to go rougher, but there's like a natural physical limitation on the roughness. So there's like, you have this desire, but it can only go so far. Like maybe that's what it is. Okay, but mommy porn started with Wuthering Heights, my peeps. Literally, though, listen, English literature is full of mommy porn, okay? Listen, classic English literature. It's all just people wanting to be in love and sexy, sexy times. I knew someone in her 60s who went all anal to avoid vaginal damage. Listen, that's gonna be me. I'm like, listen, I've had a lot of anal in my day, and I'm in a postmenopausal world. And I don't know what, HRT at that point is gonna be like, what treatments we're gonna have available for menopause by the time I get there. But like, hey, vaginal tearing, it's no fun. Why risk it? Why not be 60 years old and wearing a butt plug, I guess? I don't know. Why not? Life's too short. Do you consider being a dom is a 24/7 thing? I mean, do domina need to control every single aspect of her slave's life? Okay, so it sounds like you're probably talking about primarily female dominance and possibly professional dominance, if I had to guess. Definitely, because of the fact that it's their job, I would say a lot of female professional dominants portray their dominance as being a 24/7 thing. And certainly if it's your job, it's more 24/7 than it is going to be for a lot of people. So I get that. But at the same time, as an inherent thing, not everyone's dominance is going to be 24/7. Not everyone wants to be a dom 24/7. Everyone can be. It doesn't mean they're a lesser dom. It is about what they are available for, what their partner wants, and what they want. And certainly, unless, doing BDSM is your career, it's very hard to actually have a genuine 24/7 relationship where you're your partner's dom, even when, they're teaching preschool and you're working at an office or whatever combination it is. And also, like, in terms of needs to control every single aspect of a slave's life. So there's kind of two components to that. There's the 24/7 component, which is the first thing you mentioned, and then the controlling every single aspect would be called total power exchange, or TPE. And not all 24/7 is TPE, right? Actually, most 24/7, I would wager, is not. Most 24/7 is what we would call partial power exchange, where the dominant partner controls some things, a lot of things, but not necessarily everything. And there's certainly this fantasy that can be sold of, like, this all-powerful dominant that controls every waking moment of your life. And that can be really hot and really thrilling for people, but that's not typically the reality for most folks. That's not either physically or financially possible, or it's not really what most people are looking for. So basically, being a dom can be 24/7. It's not always. It can be 24/7 and total power exchange. It can be just total power exchange. It can be a combination, but it's not always. And also, like, being a dominant can be, like, part of your identity. Like, it can be something that you consider core to your personality, even if you don't necessarily always, act it out all the time. Or you don't necessarily, like, have a partner with you all the time doing something, Like, it ebbs and flows, right? As one's day typically does. And also, like, you can have sort of mini moments of like, kind of 24/7 where you maybe have, like, a long weekend or a vacation, or you both, like, take a sick day from work. There are ways where you can kind of play at the fantasy of being, like, truly 24/7 and being, like, a live-in slave or being a live-in submissive without it actually being that way. Also, yes, it is hot in my room, but I am using a blanket because blankets are comfortable, and you will pry them from my toasty, roasted, on fire hands, I guess, in this case, as opposed to my cold, dead, frozen hands. But also, like, you could definitely be, like, a live-in submissive and have other partners. Like, you can be a live-in submissive and meet those expectations of, like, your live-in relationship and still have, negotiated time and room for other relationships that maybe look differently. I truly do not understand people that get, like, gel pedicures or, like, dip powder pedicures. I'm like, your toenail is going to grow out faster than it's going to wear off. Like, why would you get something that is that long lived when your toenail is still going to grow out faster than it chips off? Like, why would you? What's the point of that? Maybe there's a really good reason, and I don't know. Do you have any resources for someone trying to get into hypnosis, both giving and receiving? If you haven't seen it, Kendall, you should watch the interview that I did with a hypnosis expert on my channel. If you type in hypnosis or you go to my interview playlist, it should be in there. Really, really great conversation. I know that I had links to his books in and let me see if I can find it again. Is it? Let me see if I can find the titles again. Yes, Mind Play, A Guide to Erotic Hypnosis. That was by Mark Wiseman. That came out in 2013. And there's also a couple of like follow-up books, like study guides and scripts and things like that. I don't really know a lot about hypnosis from like an actual practice perspective because I haven't really been around it that much. But there are definitely people that are in the kink scene that do hypnosis, that both do it for kink reasons, and then also are like hypnotherapist practitioners, which I believe that Mark was like trained in more of like the clinical like hypnosis as like a therapeutic practice first, even though obviously not everyone in the mental health field agrees with hypnosis as a therapeutic practice in the same way that doctors don't agree about acupuncture. So your mileage will vary, but there are definitely resources, but I can't like personally recommend anything other than that I've like vetted or experienced or been around, sadly, because it's not really a kink that I have a lot of personal experience with. All right, so really quickly, we have about 10 minutes left. Okay, 10 minutes left, everyone, 10 minutes left. So answer your questions or ask your questions very quickly. I need to use the facilities, as we might say, for a brief moment. I will be right back and we will answer the last couple of questions. So just hold on for a second. I'll be right back. Ta-da! We're back. Okay. All right, I'm going to answer like probably one or two more questions here. Thank you all so much for all of the wonderful questions. I'm sorry I couldn't get to more. We like to dive into the answers, That is where I've been. I've been voluntarily celibate for 3 years in order to allow myself time to process and understand how to navigate my post-trauma. Casual sex would not be a good choice for me as it's triggering, but to have knowledge and be prepared on how to act or to safely conduct oneself while engaging in casual sex is also important. Yes, I totally agree, LR. I think that's really awesome that you figured out what would work for you and what you need to do in order to feel safe. So awesome. Good for you. It is 4 a.m. here in Europe. I have a ton of fun hanging out with everyone, but I gotta go. Yeah, for sure. Have a good night. I too sometimes stay up until 4 a.m. So I get it. All right, let's see. Okay, answer the hypnosis thing. Yes, and depending on the trauma and the person, sex with a trusted person may actually be beneficial. Yes, that as well, right? Like it depends on the individual. It's so hard to make blanket statements when it comes to trauma, for sure. Thank you so much on giving your perspective on this. It gives us so many ways to think about this and having these conversations. Yeah, for sure. I think they can be really complicated, but that's why I love having these conversations is it definitely gives you an opportunity to think a little bit more. And I love that. I'm all about that. Sex overcoming your rational brain is why we have to know what we're planning and how to do it responsibly before you're in the moment. It's like learning a sport. You follow the rules without thinking. Yes, yep, definitely. Like you gotta know the rules for engagement before you do the engagement. You can't just be like, oh, I'll remember, whatever. Who needs to know all that? I'll remember it in the moment. I can look it up then. Nope, not always. Not always. Uh, How do you respect your partner's emotional boundaries when you are an unmitigated polyamorous trans-les disaster? My partner just wants sex. I need more emotional support, but I'm too much. Ellies, I definitely know where you're coming at with the feeling like you want more emotional support versus your partner maybe having a little bit of a higher sex drive, wanting more of a need for sex. I have certainly dealt with that a lot in my own relationship, sort of this tension between like I kind of want more of the emotional stuff, my partners kind of want more of the like physical touch stuff. Um, it, you say like the phrase emotional boundaries, and so I'm kind of wondering, is your partner like reluctant to go deeper with you emotionally to like the place that you want to go with emotionally, and so that's kind of like acting as a boundary for you to want to have sex because that emotional connection isn't to the point you want it to be yet? Or is it just you're like having trouble getting to a place where both your needs are being met? I think it's really good to find ways where you can get both needs met at the same time, ideally, or do similar things. I find generally, in my limited experience, that a lot of people that are more sex focused also enjoy a lot more elements of like general like physical affectionate touch, even if it's not just sex, right? They might really enjoy massages or foot rubs or back scratches or having their hair brushed or having their scalp massaged, taking a shower with you, bathing together. Like there's all sorts of like, or like just like kissing and hanging out and cuddling. Like there's so many things you can do that are like very physically intimate in a way that's not just sex. That one can actually act as sort of a ground for foreplay if maybe what you need is more of the foreplay and emotional connection and bonding from that foreplay before going into sex. But it can also, I think, help with the physical touch need, because I find that a lot of people who are very sex focused in relationships, oftentimes it's not just about getting sex, it's about having a higher need for physical touch. That's something you'd have to talk about, obviously, because it could just be they have a really high sex drive because maybe they're got some hormone things going on, like who knows, right? We just talked about horny middle-aged women for like 20 minutes. So like, sometimes people are just horny, so it could just be that. But and you can find ways where kind of you can both kind of get your needs met. But I think also from sort of your side of it, I'm hearing that phrasing of I'm too much, right? That's not true. I'm gonna tell you right now, that's not true. You're not too much, okay? You're not too much. You have to start from a place of accepting your emotions, okay? And your emotional needs are valid in the same way that people's sexual needs are valid. Certain people have low sex drives. Other people have very high sex drives. Some people don't really give a shit about feelings in a relationship. Other people have very high value placed on bonding and emotional connection and closeness. Both of those things are okay, as long as they're not being used to hurt someone else, right? Whether that be, weaponizing your really high sex drive to guilt somebody into sex when they don't really want it, or using your high emotional needs to guilt someone into staying in a relationship. There's extreme cases where it can go too far, but, as long as you're not doing something to hurt someone else, just in and of themselves, those needs you have are okay. And if you can't accept those feelings in yourself, you can't start to have an honest conversation with your partner about where to have both your needs met. So I'm not a therapist, not your therapist, so I can't really help you, I think, dig down into kind of what's behind and how deep that feeling of you being too much is. It's a very common feeling. It's very, very normal. I would definitely see if you can explore that a little bit more and try to break down that feeling a little bit, because I think when you get into that space of feeling like you're too much or you're too needy or no one's ever really going to love you the way you want to be loved, that can get into a place of self-sabotage. And I'm probably saying stuff you already consciously know because I bet you're a pretty smart person, but I think it's worth hearing from someone else that it's okay to have needs and you are not too much, and kind of understanding why it is you feel like too much. Was it something in this relationship that somebody said? Was it past relationships? Is it because of general kind of social expectations around how vulnerable we're supposed to be in relationships? It's up to a lot of different factors. So sort of evaluating, okay, why is it that I feel this guilt and shame around these feelings? And what is it emotionally that I actually want in a relationship? Now, again, there are edge cases where this goes too far, right? If you're expecting to have the passwords to all of your partner's accounts on all of their social media devices, and you proofread all their emails and text messages for them, that's gonna be too far. But I'm pretty sure what your emotional needs are well within acceptable parameters for what an average human being wants emotionally from a relationship. Individual people might not be compatible with being able to meet their needs because of their own emotional boundaries, because of their trauma, because of their mental health. They might not be there to provide that for you. But I think it's worth identifying what it is in particular that you want emotionally and support in the relationship. Are you looking for more quality time together? Are you looking for more positive words from your partner? Do you want to be able to do more bonding activities together? Do you just want to be able to shit talk about your day? Do you want to be able to gossip about YouTube bullshit? Whatever it is, what is it that makes you feel emotionally connected, right? And then have that conversation. But yeah. Where did I get this shirt? This shirt is from Lip Service. Lip Service. It's such a wholesome stream. I love it. Just what I need in this terrible time. Yeah, I mean, sometimes I rant and ramble. It's not quite so wholesome, but sometimes it can be pretty wholesome. I need to hear this too. Well, I'm glad it helped possibly even more than one person. Yes, if you don't know, anyways, I think that's about kind of what I want to say in answer to that. But again, it's about finding compromise, identifying what they mean when they say that they want sex, and does that really mean literally I just want sex, or is there more of a need for physical touch behind that in general? And what do you mean by you need more emotional support in the relationship? And also, you have to also have the kind of the consideration of is the kind of emotional support that I need appropriate for a romantic partner to give me? Because sometimes, I know financially it can be really hard to afford therapy. I know it can be a big time input, especially if our work is really demanding and has a lot of hours or random schedules. But if you at all have the possibility to make, if you're kind of wanting your partner to be like a surrogate therapist or like a surrogate counselor or like life coach, you have to understand that your partners are human beings, and I'm sure you do, but that they have emotional limitations for what they can really provide within the context of that kind of a connection. So some things might actually be more appropriate to work with, with a professional. And if you're able to do that, if you can find a way to do that, I would really, really encourage that. But also your partner can provide some degree of emotional support. They can't just like be a surrogate therapist. So, there's limitations there, but you are still allowed to have needs. All right. One more question. I'm gonna zoom on to the bottom here. I'm breaking my in order rule, but I just want to make sure I haven't missed any follow-up questions or anything else. When you asked for questions on Twitter, I see we were going to make a video answering them. Was I wrong? No, I am. I am making a video answering them. I filmed that yesterday, actually. So, yes, I have made a video answering the asexuality FAQ questions. Although that is just asexuality frequently asked questions. So, you know what I meant. Today, my friend said there are pain receptors for VR now. I did not know that. One thing that immediately popped into my mind was virtual impact play. At Evie, have you heard of that? Do you think it's possible? I've not heard of that. I don't know how possible that is. I would be very curious to know how they would do that. I'm kind of picturing kind of like TENS unit, like electropads getting stuck to your body, and like you could definitely do like electroshock that's like connected to inputs from a controller or like outputs from a game maybe. But I'm not really sure how else that would work. I don't know. It's interesting though. Mm-hmm. Ooh, well, congratulations on your second day sober, Zulema. I hope that you are able to stick with it. We are wishing you the best. I'm wishing you the best. Opiates are really, really hard. I don't know if you have ever watched a channel called Of Herbs and Altars before, but she has some really good videos. Or Dorian, sorry, I apologize. Dorian has some really good videos on their channel where they talk about their experience actually being someone in the UK that briefly got access to opiates from someone that was living in America where they were doing like long distance drug trade stuff. And if you ever want some encouragement for like getting sober on opiates and like sober from stimulants as well, they have great videos talking about their experiences. So if that's of interest to you and possibly helpful in your sober journey, that might be something you want to look into. I don't know. Just like some very long, rambly YouTube videos to watch, if for distraction, if nothing else. Oh! Oh my gosh, thank you, Creative Authority.
Creative Authority donated $22.
Thank you.
I really, really enjoyed pregame Evie from a bit back. Let us know when we might see her again.
Oh, before my birthday. I think I might still have some coconut rum left. I can't make any promises for when we would do that again. I don't really have any like holidays or anything special coming up, but like, I enjoyed it enough. I didn't really, I was actually kind of hungover the day after. I think there was like probably more allergies, but it wasn't really helped by the alcohol. So I'm sure I will be doing a stream like that again. Thank you. My partner can't separate the smell of latex condoms from rubber birthday balloons. So he buys latex free just for that. They're only $1 each at our local toy shop. That's amazing. I never had made that connection before, but you're also totally right. That's very, very funny. Could Planned Parenthood, it says PP, could PP be a source of free non-latex condoms? I haven't asked for condoms from Planned Parenthood before, but I think they probably would be. I'd be surprised if they didn't have a non-latex option. Do Little's events in other areas normally have fewer attendees? In my area, Little's nights at the dungeon have either half of the normal turnout or barely anyone there. You know, I haven't really had a lot of kind of like post-pandemic experience with Little's events, but I would say because it is more of a niche group, whenever you're getting a niche group of people as opposed to a general play party, you're going to have fewer people, especially because I think a lot of people that aren't into that kink find it visually uncomfortable to be around. And so even if, you know, with like, you know, a bondage party, people that don't do bondage might still go because they want to watch and it looks cool. Whereas with like DDLG and like age play and stuff, I think a lot of people don't enjoy the way that it looks like visually, kind of makes them uncomfortable. So if they aren't going to participate, they're probably not going to go themselves. But yeah. Latex condoms remind me of going to the dentist. Oh, like the gloves, like the latex gloves. I always think about the fact they used to blow up the gloves like balloons, and then they make little balloons out of them that would look like turkeys. I always thought that was cute. That was one of my dentists growing up did that, and I thought it was fun. Well, it is 10 after 8, so I think I am at the end of my rope here because my throat's getting dry and I have no water left. So I gotta take care of that business. Thank you all so much for being here. Again, as a reminder, we are doing a watch party this weekend on Patreon for how to build a sex room, which has very polarizing reviews online. 93% of people reviewed the series and said they liked it, and it has under 5 stars on IMDb. So it's like, people liked it, but not really, I guess. Who knows? It'll be a magical, amazing experience, but that's happening this weekend. So if you want to make sure to miss out on that, it's on Patreon, any dollar level, any tier. We're going to be hanging out and watching that together. It's going to be a little TV show, binge marathon. It's going to be fun. There's going to be chips and dip and I don't know. Maybe not chips and dip. Maybe I shouldn't make any promises. But yeah, that's going to be it for now, guys. Thank you all so much for being here and sharing your questions. It was so great to answer some of your questions and talk to you today. Stay safe out there, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.